Image never before seen in American history, a mugshot of former President Donald Trump, released overnight by the sheriff's office in Fulton County, Georgia. It comes after Mr. Trump surrendered to authorities at the county jail, where he was officially charged with trying to overturn his 2020 election loss in Georgia. He remained defiant as he left the state.
I did nothing wrong.
And overnight, describing the surrender to Newsmax.
No, it is what it is. I took a mugshot, which I never heard the words mugshot. Didn't teach me that at the Wharton School of Finance.
Now, the former president is trying to turn the unprecedented photo into a political asset. His campaign is selling mugshot T-shirts with the caption, "Never Surrender," and posting the image on X, formerly known as Twitter. His first post on the platform in more than 2 years since his suspension after January 6th. With the area around the Fulton County Jail on heavy lockdown, Mr. Trump was inside for less than 20 minutes, entering booking information, hair color, blonde or strawberry, eyes, blue, height, 6'3" and weight, 215 pounds. He was then released on a $200,000 bond. Charles Shaw, the bail bondsman who facilitated Trump's release, spoke with NBC's Gabe Gutierrez.
It was a wow moment, an overwhelming moment, and I just wanted to make sure that we did it right.
Outside the jail, a parade of supporters.
Will you vote for him?
Absolutely, 100%.
Even with the legal challenges, even with
Absolutely.
the indictments?
Yeah, because they're phony.
This morning, 17 of the 19 total co-defendants, including Mr. Trump, have turned themselves in ahead of today's deadline set by DA Fani Willis, including former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, seen here in a mugshot of his own. This morning, the GOP frontrunner surrender is making waves on the campaign trail. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in Iowa asked if Trump's legal troubles will overshadow the primary race.
If Republicans let it overwhelm, then it will. But we don't have to let it overwhelm.
And we are closing in on that noon deadline for the remaining co-defendants to turn themselves in. The sheriff says he does believe that everyone will surrender by that deadline. Now, about that mugshot, Craig, I understand that the decision to take such a picture was not made lightly. In fact, I'm told that discussions as to whether or not the mugshot would be taken were happening as late as yesterday. Craig.
All right, Blaine Alexander starting us off there in Atlanta. Blaine, thank you. Let's get some perspective on the overnight developments from NBC senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett and NBC chief White House correspondent Kristen Walker. Ladies, good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Let's start with the legal side, Laura. So the president now, he's been booked, he's posted bond. We've seen the mugshot. What does this mean for the case moving forward now? Where does it go?
Legally, the most important aspect of this entire sort of process for the former president is that he abides by those conditions for his release. Remember, we've seen the sort of paper that sets out the fact that he can't intimidate witnesses. He can't even talk to his co-defendants about the facts of the case. And we know that former Mayor Rudy Giuliani said, oh, I talked to him earlier this week. We don't know what they talked about, but it just shows you sort of the delicate dance the prosecutors are going to have here to decide when do we want to bring something to the judge's attention, and the judge, how much does he want to enforce this? How strictly does he want to read into it?
How do they go about enforcing the conditions of the bail?
The prosecutors, if they thought there was a violation, they would bring it to the judge's attention, and then they would have to hold a hearing. And, of course, the judge wouldn't necessarily throw him in jail right away. He could issue a contempt order. He could give him an admonishment. He could do a fine. You could do any number of things short of jail.
Former president also changed attorneys there in Georgia once again, just days before he was booked yesterday. What, if anything, can we glean from that? And do we know if the attorneys quit or if the former president fired them?
We don't know. It's hard to know whether is it about money? Is it about strategy? We've seen it before. He has something of a pattern of switching lawyers late in the game. I will mention, though, the person that he has hired is someone experienced in criminal defense in Atlanta, someone well-known in those circles, and so you can understand why you want someone on your side in this case like that.
Kristen, let's turn to the political ramifications. Take us, first of all, just inside Trump world. What are you hearing from people who are in that inner circle about what transpired last night, that surreal moment of seeing a former president's mugshot?
It was a surreal moment. I spoke with aides who were traveling with the former president, and they said he remains defiant. And I think that was highlighted by his decision to post his mugshot on X, formerly known as Twitter, the first tweet we have seen since January of 2021. And he is using this as a rallying cry, taking a step back. This fits into a strategy we've seen from the former president since 2016. He is making the case, it is him and his supporters against the establishment, that he is taking on the machine for them. So politically speaking, this is compelling, but if you talk to some of those in his inner circle, they say, look, there's some political concern as well. Georgia is a key state that he would all but certainly need if he wants to win re-election in a general election campaign. And while his core supporters love these images and they're going to rally around these images, it could be counter, and it could have the opposite effect for independents, for example, those critical voters who would make all the difference in a general election.
I mean, I think some folks probably thought that the first impeachment or the second impeachment might dent his popularity among primary voters. That didn't seem to have the effect. I think folks thought maybe after the first, second, maybe even third arrest. Now there's a fourth arrest. Now there's a mugshot. Is there any reason to believe that this will be the thing that finally sways some of the former president's most diehard supporters?
There's no indication that former President Trump's diehard supporters would waver at all for any reason. And look at what we saw this week, the first GOP primary debate. His Republican challengers were asked, would they still support him if he was convicted of a crime? This extraordinary moment where 6 out of 8 of his challengers on the stage raised their hands. His allies in Congress are vowing to investigate Fani Willis, the DA. So it's very hard to see that this would have an impact in the primary. But again, in the general election, it's potentially a different story.
Really quickly, Laura, last question. Of the 4 cases the former president now faces, the case in Mar-a-Lago, the hush money case here in New York, the special counsel's case in D.C., of the 4, from a legal standpoint, where is he most vulnerable?
The mishandling of classified documents is the one to watch, because that's the one where you have a cooperator, and that's what makes it different.
Laura Jarrett, Kristen Walker, ladies, thank you both. Have a great weekend.
You too.
On Public.com, you can get a 5% yield when you move your